Hi, I'm Kimberly. Welcome back to the Success Series Talks. Talks designed to help you get what you want out of life. Remember to listen, take notes, and most importantly, act. Have you ever heard the story of the man who was caught in rising waters? He climbed up in a tree and trusted that God was going to rescue him. Pretty soon, a neighbor saw him and called out for him to climb on his raft. But the guy refused, saying that God would save him. A little while later, a man came by in a boat and said, "Hey, jump in," and that he would take him to safety. Again, he refused, saying that he had already prayed and he was sure that God was going to come through for him. Well, the waters continued to get higher and higher, and the man was in great danger. Soon a helicopter came and offered to fly him to safety. But again, the man refused. Finally, the waters rose until the man drowned. When he died, he went to heaven. And there he asked God, "Why didn't you save me? I prayed and trusted in you, and you didn't do it." "Well," said the Lord, "I sent you a raft, a boat, and a helicopter, but you never got in." Now, we may chuckle when we hear this story, but I can't help but wonder how often we really are like this man. How often do we let opportunities fly by because they aren't what we were expecting? I have heard people complain that their prayers go unanswered by God. However, I wonder if they are unanswered, or more correctly, not received. I had a friend who said that he had a ton of financial problems and needed help. I suggested a very inexpensive way to give him an education on finances in the form of a book and some CDs, which would help him to get control. But he told me he couldn't afford the $150. The next week, they decided to buy a $5,000 truck, which did not help his finances. Now, they didn't have to have the truck. They had other vehicles. It was just something extra they decided to buy. So they had the money to buy something else, but and then they'll complain because their finances are so bad, but they won't take that opportunity. So have you ever known that person who always calls you to ask you for your opinion or for ideas, but when you give them what they ask for, they either come up with an excuse for why each one couldn't possibly work, or they say, "I just don't like that one." Maybe that person is you. I hope not. If it is, this talk is definitely for you. So people want a better life. They want God to give them the things they pray for. But how often are people willing to accept the answers given and take the opportunity laid out before them? I find there are no shortages of opportunities, or even a shortage of people willing to take them. This is why you see the rich get rich and the poor get poorer. Believe it or not, the rich, though not desperate, are always looking for opportunities, while others are often waiting for luck or for someone else to deliver them. Which type of person are you? You might want to examine your life. Has God, or maybe you believe in some sort of higher power, been putting opportunities in front of you that maybe you have let go of because you think the timing is off, or because it looks challenging or difficult, or you don't have enough money or enough time for that? Okay, one very successful man said, "Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work." That man was Thomas Edison. Now, do you think he turned down very many opportunities? If you were to read the biographies about his life, you would find that he was an opportunity seeker and taker. Opportunities don't always just hit us on the head. We sometimes have to very consciously and sometimes painstakingly seek them out. Most opportunities will not find us while we are sitting in front of a TV, surfing the internet, or checking our updates on Facebook. We need to put ourselves around information, people, and settings that are conducive to finding opportunities. Then we have to get good at recognizing them. In the book Hidden Solutions All Around Us, there's an interesting story of a choir member named Art Fry. So he'd been using scraps of paper to mark certain spots in his music, but when he'd turn the pages or he'd move it just right, the papers kept falling out and he'd lose his spot. So he's working for the 3M company at the time in product development. And one day, as he was struggling with how to save his spot, he remembered something interesting from work that had happened before. There was a man he had worked with a few years earlier who had invented a product that had just turned out to be a failure. Dr. Silver had created an adhesive that wasn't sticky enough to actually use for anything. So the next day, he went and talked to Dr. Silver, and through some effort, they were able to locate a bottle of the failed adhesive. Fry quickly put some of it on the paper and then stuck that paper to another one. And just as expected, it stuck. Even better, though, was that it was easy to pull back off if you wanted to get rid of it. He had recognized an important moment. One of those ahas, a moment in his life that he could have ignored. Nothing forced him to take this opportunity. Instead, the Post-it note was born. You see, he didn't just see it as a way to help him. He actually sat down and started to think of how it could be used to help other people. And aren't we all glad he did? I would be willing to bet that anyone listening to this has used a Post-it note many times. Does it make you wonder what other great ideas you could come up with from seemingly insignificant and useless things? You could make a success of something that seemed a failure. Another story that I recently heard is one that isn't quite as dramatic as that one, and it didn't affect as many people, but maybe the principle behind it will help you with a problem you're having. So I have a friend who was saying that they went to the doctor because they had depression. They told the doctor they didn't want any medication because they were praying for answers and were sure that God would answer that prayer. A very wise doctor looked at them and said, "How do you know that medication isn't the answer to your prayer? Someone was inspired to come up with this medication." It was another answer almost overlooked. Just like the man in the boat, they were expecting God to somehow give them the answer or help them come up with the solution all by themselves. But it was already out there and God was just waiting for them to take it. The same thing can be said about going to a therapist for personal or marriage problems, joining a network marketing business to help your finances, or going to a seminar and meeting new contacts. We can get so focused on how we think something should happen that we may miss multiple opportunities while the how we wanted never actually manifests. Then we become super bitter at our spouse, the world, God, our boss, or whoever, when really we have no one to blame but ourselves for not recognizing the opportunity. Part of the problem of why we don't recognize our opportunities, I think, is because we aren't trained to do that. Most people think there are only two options to most problems because that is often all we are presented with from the time we are kids. Do you want this or that? You can either do this or you can be punished. You can either get good grades and get scholarships or get bad grades and take out student loans. Think about it. How many times have you been given multiple options for choices? Stephen R. Covey has a book called The Third Alternative that I recommend everybody reads. He talks about this very issue and educates people on how to come up with different solutions so they can have a win-win situation. Often, when there's only two solutions, it's usually one is a win for somebody and one's a lose for somebody, or sometimes they're a lose-lose situation, okay? Yet people choose those because they can't come up with anything better. So this has actually helped me to have a different mindset many times, and the outcome of many of my decisions has been significantly better than the original two options I gave myself. It takes work to think of alternatives, and this may be part of the reason we don't like to do it. One interesting thing I have heard people say before, really, I've heard a lot of people say this, and it is that we can either stay married and be miserable or get a divorce and move on with our lives and be happy. Now, have you ever thought this or ever heard someone say this? Why do we only give ourselves those two options? Neither one sounds all that fantastic, right? Something's lost either way. What happened to the choice of we could stay together, work on our weaknesses, and have a great marriage and be very happy? It's a third alternative that is healthier, happier, and way more inexpensive than the other two options that most people use as their go-to. Why is the only option for a business to keep losing money and sell out and cut their losses? Why can't there be an option for getting up with the times, start selling a different product, do something differently for advertising, or downsize for a while? Ever be an option? Well, it can, and some companies do take them, while others don't. They don't want to think of those hard solutions. They just want an easy way out. Chances are there are ways to save many businesses that go under, but not as long as they don't look for alternative options. Sometimes it may require a little more creativity, and it will certainly be more difficult, but it isn't giving up difficult too, with a long road ahead. So another reason that people do not take opportunities put in front of them is because of fear. Some of those opportunities may require us to get outside of our comfort zones, right? They may challenge our past beliefs about something. They may be something that our families and friends won't approve of because they tried that or that kind of thing never works. So we sit back and say, well, I don't want to disappoint anyone, so I just won't do it. In the process of trying not to disappoint anyone or get uncomfortable, we ourselves are disappointed and perhaps more uncomfortable with our lifestyle. Most of the time, people's fear, or the reason why they fear is because they don't have information about something. If this is you, then start going to seminars and reading books and talking to people who do know about it. Maybe you want to get into investing, but you don't dare because you don't really understand how it works. You're right. You shouldn't. It is no better than gambling. However, if you took some classes from the city you live in or the local college started attending seminars and learning about it, then eventually you could be educated enough to actually do something about it, and it wouldn't be such a high risk. You see, the more knowledge you have of something and the more you understand it, the less risk there is involved. Something that is risky to you is hardly a risk at all to someone else. Meanwhile, guaranteed there is something you do every day that someone else finds to be very risky. If you took someone from a village in a third world country who had never seen a car and told them to start driving in Los Angeles, it would be risky, dangerous, and most likely life-threatening. But with proper training and knowledge, people successfully do that every day. If I were to go out tomorrow and go skiing on a mountain for experts, chances are I will break every bone in my body before I'm done and possibly be dead. Because I know nothing about downhill skiing. I have not developed that talent. Meanwhile, there are kids and teens doing it and they don't die or even get hurt. Whatever interests you, if you or those around you try to convince you that it is too risky, remember, you have the power that by gaining more knowledge or developing a skill in that area that will take it from a risk to a productive and possibly lucrative opportunity. Are there opportunities right now in your life you've been turning down over and over and over again because they just seem too risky? Maybe, just maybe, this is an invitation from God to start developing yourself in that area instead of just avoiding it. It may be worth your time to look into it and think about it. Just saying. A good way to look at opportunities is to evaluate it on a couple of things. I am not suggesting that every opportunity that comes your way will even be what you want to do. And you don't have to take every one. You will be given far more opportunities in life than you can possibly make time for. So you're going to have to choose some over others. First of all, you need to decide if it is even interesting to you. No sense in taking an opportunity that you know you don't even want to do. Also, the opportunity should obviously be moral, legal, and ethical. I am fairly certain that an opportunity that doesn't include those three things is probably not an answer from God, and you definitely shouldn't receive it. That may seem so obvious to some of you out there, but I guarantee it is not obvious to everyone. Also, determine how long it would take you to develop the opportunity. Is it worth the time and money you may be investing in it? If it is, go forward. If not, then don't. Only you can make that decision. It will be different for different people. Another thing to remember about this is that most often your answered prayer that you have the opportunity to receive will not be complete. It will most likely be an idea that will require some extra work to figure it out. You may get part of the idea today while in the shower, and in another week, another part of it will come while driving home from work. It could take you months to get it all figured out. Don't ignore those thoughts and insights. They can turn into amazing opportunities. You wouldn't believe how many stories are out there of people who drew or wrote their ideas on napkins in a restaurant, because that is where they received an idea, and that idea became worth millions of dollars. I suggest that you start carrying around a small notebook in your pocket, or even some note cards, and start writing down ideas that come to you. It might be something when someone says something, or it might even be something you see on the internet, or something you hear on the radio, or whatever, and just start writing them down. Write them down even if they don't make sense, or even if they don't seem like anything that could matter or work at all. You never know when you finally get 10 or 15 ideas together that what ones might actually go together and might turn out to be really, really good. You won't notice or even remember all those ideas if you don't put them down on paper. Okay? The best memory is not as good as the dullest pencil. You need to write these things down. Most likely, it'll also help you with recognizing the opportunities if you're actually consciously acknowledging them and writing them down. So if you want to get good at receiving the answers God has for you and improving your situation, you've got to become good recognizing those answers, which will come in the form of ideas, and you've got to write them down so you remember them. Think about it. Why should God or the universe or energy or your subconscious give you any ideas if you aren't going to remember them past today? It is pointless to inspire someone who refuses to be inspired. Again, if you are given something and don't receive it, it is not any better than if it hadn't been given in the first place. There are countless stories of people who have even woke up in the middle of the night, and instead of just going back to sleep, they hurry and they grab their notebook and they start writing down what is on their minds. So I started reading books where I heard of people who were doing that. And I realized that many times I had woke up in the middle of the night and either I'd had an interesting dream or a certain thought would come to me, and I'd always tell myself, like, I'm going to remember that in the morning. And guess what would happen? I wouldn't remember it. Occasionally I would, or I'd have an interesting dream even, and I think, that was interesting. I could use that somewhere. Maybe I should write, I should remember that for the morning. Gone the next day. I'd try all day to think about it. Sometimes I'd remember, sometimes I wouldn't. So I read some books that talked about people who do this, and I've been doing this for years now, and it works. Answers aren't confined to a certain time. And if we want to receive the answers that we are looking for, then we must be ready and even willing to be a little inconvenienced at times. When that idea earns you $1 million, I don't think you're going to be upset that you got woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning or 3:30, 3 or 4 times a week to start writing down all these things, right? When you start to put all those things together and it becomes a moneymaker for you, you'll be glad that you did it. This is how people become really, really rich. They are constantly looking for opportunities, and they don't argue with them. They don't argue with when they come, why they come, how they come, where they come, who they came from. They use them. So I want you to start to pay attention to how many people are looking for solutions, but when offered a variety of them, just wave them off and give more problems as to why that won't work. When you start to notice that, and you will, if you are looking for it, then I want you to start paying attention to how often you do it, or ask a friend or spouse to. It will shock you how many solutions are out there that you refuse to even acknowledge, let alone check out. We dismiss them without so much as further thought and continue to pray that God will give us the miracle and that He will change our situations when all we need to do is to start accepting the answers He has already given us. Thanks for listening, and make it a great day. Remember to subscribe to my channel so you can listen to other great talks. Also, give it a like and share it with others you think may benefit.